What's up, Mike Nowstalgia. Dave here with a review of Peacemaker Season 2. Second season of the DCU superhero series has concluded on HBO Max. On one hand, its conclusion has kind of sullied, I think, the vibe I was feeling with the season throughout its runtime. Peacemaker Season 2 is more successful than its predecessor because it's able to successfully have stronger emotional stakes throughout its runtime. I do think the finale kind of fizzles out the story. The breadth of montages in that finale suggested that there wasn't a lot of story left to tell and the show is kind of running on fumes in a sense. But the core arc of Chris in the second season, going to an alternate reality, seeing his family members alive once again, I think all that material was quite strong and Cena did a great job in the role. However, season 2 actually ends in a much more open-ended place than I was expecting. And if we think about how season 2 begins, right, and we right away, I think add some stakes here where Chris ends up killing an alternate reality version of himself through that, magical particle closet from his late father. And then he's able to see his father and his brother alive as an adult in this alternate universe. And I think all that leads to some really good material, especially when Chris goes off to join and live in this alternate universe and leave his friends and his real place behind. I like all of that. There's I think the comedy and the humor maybe isn't as consistent or as prevalent in season 2 as it was in the first season, where Peacemaker's outlandish persona as a character, as a superhero, anti-hero type, that's more front and center of the storytelling of that first season, following his introduction in James Gunn's The Suicide Squad. We get a little less of that in the second season. I think Cena's playing it a lot more serious. Chris is a lot more dour for the most part. I think Freddie Stroma as Vigilante, still quite amusing in his ridiculousness for sure. Michael Rooker's introduction as this culturally appropriating bird of prey raptor hunter who has a arc with Eagly. That was also pretty funny. For the most part, though, it's a more serious season. I think Danielle Brooks as Adebayo does a really good job with what she's given. And, perhaps I wasn't really expecting it, but Jennifer Holland as Harcourt also does a lot because she also gets to, like John Cena, play two versions of herself and actually gets a lot of range in that regard, playing the two versions of Harcourt that we meet. I did think they left a lot of meat on the bone, though, with that alternate reality, chiefly the reveal that this was an alternate universe where the Nazis won World War II, and Chris unknowingly was stepping into a white supremacist land with no people of color anywhere to be found. I think they had more to play with that. They kind of wiped their hands of it quicker than I was expecting. Also, I guess the conflict, right, with season 2. I think it becomes a bit clear, a bit straightforward as it's going, where Frank Grillo as Rick Flag Sr. back again following his introduction in Superman earlier this summer. And he has a bone to pick, of course, with Peacemaker due to Peacemaker's killing of Joel Kinnaman's Rick Flag Jr. in the Suicide Squad, and that kind of motivates his character as the head of Argus to do what he does. And I actually did like the callback to Joel Kinnaman. Got to see a little bit of him in this flashback with Harcourt. I enjoyed seeing Kinnaman, especially when he got to play Off-Type in the alternate universe as a version of Flag who was alive. I think all that stuff really, really works well. The stuff that kind of speeds ahead before you know it is, Chris getting jettisoned off to an alternate dimension somewhere, Salvation, by Argus, by Flag, and seemingly at the same time, the rest of his crew forming the Checkmate team as we know it from the comics. And I guess that's your foundation, right, for the future of the storytelling. Of course, earlier in the season, getting Grillo back as Flag Senior is one thing, but we do see Nicholas Hoult in a one-scene cameo as Lex Luthor in jail, and Peacemaker Season 2, as a result, explains how Lex Luthor is freed from jail. Of course, he ended up there at the end of Superman. Now we know his station leading into the next DCU films with Supergirl and the sequel to this year's Superman. That's pretty significant. We didn't get any more of Lex, though, but Peacemaker has been placed somewhere to be reused later in the storytelling, you would assume, and overall the Peacemaker series has concluded. So what I think what I'm most kind of impressed with overall with the Peacemaker 2-season project is that James Gunn was able to, I think, pretty deftly weave this into the new DCU canon, even though the Peacemaker character, Rick Flag Jr. from Kinnaman, like all of this was conceived and created when the old DCEU was still running, even if, of course, we know how strained that continuity was. So these characters feel like they're part of the DCU, and of course, you know, in the beginning of the season, we had the Justice Gang cameo, which was fun. Tonally, it's all there. I do think this season has shown us that James Gunn is not the most reliable narrator when he's talking about the scope and stakes of his projects and things like that. Of course, this is the guy who hyped up the plot ramifications of season 2, someone who even talked quite positively of the Ezra Miller Flash film when he had seen it. Of course, that was perhaps him being diplomatic, but either way, Peacemaker season 2, I think it's largely successful. Again, kind of fizzles out. I'll be curious how many of these characters we end up seeing again beyond John Cena's Chris. We'll find out. Let me know, though, what do you think of Peacemaker Season 2? Do you think it's broadly a stronger season than its predecessor? Let me know. And for more TV reviews, superhero reviews, subscribe. And I'll see you next time.